Hey guys, welcome back to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. This is the next in the series of Overwhelmed Mama. And the reason that I'm doing these videos is because it seems that a lot of people are seeing their children as a burden. I'm seeing this within Christian websites, like not websites, but like Facebook groups I'm on, and things where people are seeing their children as a burden when they're supposed to be seen as blessings. Sorry, I thought I heard someone coming in the door. And so I wanted to do a video series about how we can see our children as blessings, even when we feel overwhelmed by other things that are going on in our life, and be able to point out the burdens for what the burdens actually are, instead of pointing at our children as the burden. So I've done a whole series, like there's multiple videos in this series. If you're just joining, you can go back and watch other ones. But the one I want to talk about today is school. So if you are not a homeschooler, this might not be as pertinent to you because I'm talking from a mom who's been homeschooling for 20 years now, a long time. I have graduated 2 children, and I have another who will be graduating in just a few months, and then we have a baby on the way. So I'm still in this for the long haul, which is good, and I love it. It's exciting. But school can be very overwhelming sometimes. There's lots of aspects that make school overwhelming. So that's what we want to talk about today. I am not a traditional schooler, so people who are listening to this, we do not sit down with workbooks and do school from 9 to 5 or 8 to 2 or whatever your schedule is. We do school throughout the day in different ways, in different places, we're not unschoolers. I do have like consistency and set things we do during the day, but I would say a lot of our learning happens outside of the short period of time that I have for sit down book work. We do a lot of read alouds and that type of thing. As you can see, we do have a lot of books. We have a lot of workbooks. So it's not that we're not in books. We just don't have a traditional, here's where we sit down for an extended period of time to do work. So anyway, I think that my suggestions will help somebody who is that type of homeschooler also, though. We've done different things over the years, so this is what works for us right now. But there are a lot of things that can be stressful. I'll get into it on my list because I'm going to forget something if I try. So first, as homeschoolers, we need to remember that learning happens everywhere. So whether you're at the kitchen making muffins, whether you're sitting at the dining room table having a discussion about what's going on in the world, or whether you're sitting on the couch and reading a book, learning is happening. Your children are learning from you. They might be learning actual academic skills, like we're going to sit down with our math book and learn 2 + 2, or we're standing in the kitchen and we're making the muffins and we have to double the recipe. Actual academic things. They might be learning worldview from you if you're talking politics at the dinner table, or if you're talking about some situation that's come up within your home. They might be learning from your example of Christ-likeness that you're showing to them. And when we're an overwhelmed, stressed mama, that example of Christ-likeness is not always what we want to show them. So remember that they're always watching and they're always learning. The other nice thing to remember about this is that means they're always watching and always learning, even when we're not specifically doing school. So maybe it's a holiday time, like Christmas, and you're busy with making the cookies and getting the meal ready for the big family thing and putting together the costumes for the pageant. I don't know what you do for Christmas. But all of those things, your kids are watching and they're learning. Watching you go through maybe a long-term sickness in the family or a death in the family is teaching them how to deal with big emotions. And that can be stressful as a mom, having to handle their big emotions while you're handling your own big emotions, but it is a form of learning that they're doing every day. So don't worry so much. Do your state standards. I'm not saying go against your state standards. That's not what I'm saying. But remember that they're learning even on days that you're not sitting down with the books. There's still learning happening. Next one. The most important thing that you can teach your children is about God and about the Bible. So if those other things don't happen, it's not a big deal. Nobody asks when you go for your first job interview, how old were you when you started reading? Nobody asks, when did you master your times tables? Those are all things that kids will eventually learn, and those are all good things to learn and things that I do teach my kids. But if I only have a short period of time to teach my kids today, would I rather sit down and struggle through an algebra lesson, or would I rather teach them about the greatness of God? And you can teach them the greatness of God through math. You can teach them the greatness of God through science. But make sure you're focusing on the thing that is important, which is teaching them about God. Because they're going to learn that other stuff. There are so many resources to learn. You can watch YouTube videos. You can read books. You can talk to experts. There's so many ways to learn. But God is first and foremost. And so making sure that that's part of your school day every day. And the other thing to remember is you're not behind. Everybody grows at a different rate. And I know we've all seen those milestone charts, even if you're a new mama and you haven't started homeschooling yet. You've seen those milestone charts about at 2 months, the baby's supposed to be doing this. At 6 months, the baby's doing this. Oh no, they're 1 year old, they're not walking yet. There is a time and a place to worry that something isn't happening, but every child does not fit exactly on that chart. I have large children from the time they're born. They're not super large when they're born. I have not had a 9-pound baby, but my children immediately start gaining weight. I've never had one of those tiny babies. So I need some of you guys to have tiny babies on the other end so that my big babies can be on the far end of the chart. Your tiny babies are on the other end of the chart. We make a happy medium. And it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong just because you have the tiny baby. It doesn't mean there's something necessarily wrong because your child catches on to reading at 7 while another child catches on to reading at 4. That might even be within your own family. I've had kids who are figuring out how to sound out words at age 4. So cat, bat, hit, they can figure out those words. I have others that really doesn't make sense to them till 7 or 8. Like they can do it. We can sit there and we can struggle through cat. I think I know what a cat is. Like that is just how they are. And then when they actually get it at 7 or 8, they suddenly take off with it. So I'm not saying to not introduce topics or any of those things, but remember that you're always looking at the middle ground. So when they say a child starts reading by age 5 or 6, I'm just making that number up, I'm not sure. There's going to be kids that are 3 and 4, and there's going to be kids that are 7 and 8, and that's okay. If you are worried, if you are concerned, it is okay to go get an evaluation with the doctor. We have a 4-year-old right now who broke his tibia back a couple months ago and hasn't started walking correctly again, but he never really walked correctly in the first place. So we're going to get him evaluated just because I see some things that I want to have another set of eyes on. But I'm the mama, and so I spend a lot of time with him, and it's something that I'm like, okay, this is a little more than just we're a little delayed, if that makes sense. We're on the far end of normal. Where I've had other kids that we've had issues that it was like, you know what, I think that's going to work itself out, and we're going to wait, and we're going to see what this is. So as a mama, remember that you know more about your child than any doctor or specialist you're going to take them to. So if you have concerns, please go get them checked out. But also remember, if you think your child is just on the slow end of normal, that can be totally okay. So try to remember that the only reason you feel you're behind is because the public school system has set up a way to be able to grade all the children, to make sure that we can move them on to the next grade, that we can make sure that we're pushing people through. And your child doesn't have to follow that if they're homeschooling. I have kids, all of my kids are in different levels of schooling for different subjects. So they might be really good at reading and their math is a little lower. They might be really far advanced, grades ahead in math, but they're on grade level for reading, whatever this grade level is. And so in homeschooling, you can help your child to excel at the things that they're good at and to work hard through the things that they struggle with. But you don't have to keep them at a 2nd grade level because their math just hasn't quite caught up yet. If they can read at a 7th grade level, let them read at the 7th grade level and do the math at the 2nd grade level. Allow them to follow those passions and desires. But you're only behind because as a nation, we believe that the public school has made this set of standards that we should follow, and that our kids are going to fit in whatever their nice little formula is. But the kids in public school don't all fit in that formula. You have kids that are way under the level that they've made it. Most kids do not read, like more than 50%, don't read and do math at whatever the public school has decided is what should happen at that grade anyway. So don't feel like you're behind. Continue pushing your child, but work through what your child is working, like at the pace your child's willing to work. Okay, so with all of that in mind, what is causing stress in your homeschooling? Maybe it's the time of day that you do your lessons. I have children who work really well when they first get up, and so they get up and they do their math first because math's a hard subject for them, and they just know that their brain power is best when they first get up, and they can get through that hard subject and then enjoy the rest of their day. You know what? That's great. Other kids, their brain doesn't quite start working until after lunch, so we do the easier subjects, and then after lunch they have more brain capacity and they're more awake to be able to do those subjects. So look at what your child is able to do and look at what time they're able to do that. An easy way to fix up that stressor is to just change the time. Maybe math first thing in the morning is not the best thing for you or your child. Maybe it's better for your child and not best for you. And so working on something like that. So like I know somebody who had a son who wasn't very good at math. Math was very hard for them. And so this son could try some work in the morning, but come to mom after lunch with his problems, like things that he needed help on. So it helped both of them to work within their schedule. So just see what works best. Maybe you're a pregnant mama and you need that nap time after lunch. I'm not taking a nap every day right now. I'm 21 weeks pregnant, but my brain power is not as good right after lunch. Definitely, if I sit down and try to read for a long period of time, I'm going to doze off. So we don't do our read alouds right now after lunch. We do them either earlier in the day or we do them later in the afternoon. But the right after lunchtime is not the time to do those. So just changing up the time, that might help with some of the stress. Maybe the curriculum you have isn't working. And I know as a homeschool mama, this is really hard because we spend money, good hard-earned money to buy curriculum. But if you have a curriculum that's not working, put it away. Maybe shelve it for a little bit. Maybe it'll be good for another child. Maybe it's just not what your family uses. We've had different things over the years where it was more structured of, you have to do these amount of lessons in a day. And if you stop for a while, it's really hard to restart. Those lessons don't work well for us. Between medical issues that go on as family and stuff, it's just not the best use of our time. And so I've had things that I've paid for, and then I turn around and hand it off the next year because it's just not working for us. But also with that, be willing to understand that a curriculum might work really well for a few kids and then suddenly not work for that next kid, and that's okay too. But I think sometimes our stress comes from the curriculum we're trying to make fit into our family schedule, our family style, and it's just not working. I have a reading program that I have used for all of my kids, and it has worked great for all of my kids. For anyone who wants to know, it's called Alpha Phonics. I don't use it exactly as the book says. I use the book more as a spine of how I'm going to teach reading. That has worked great for all of my kids. I've had other programs that worked really good for my two daughters. So my first son was older, and we didn't have quite the financial resources to buy as much stuff. So I kind of just used what I had. And I knew people who worked in the public school system, and so as they'd get rid of books and stuff, I was handed down, science books from the public school or math books from the public school, whatever. And that's what I was using because that was all that I had. I didn't have resources to buy other things. But then by the time the girls started homeschooling, Virginia and Naomi, I was able to purchase some things. Well, Virginia and Naomi are both very much exceptional learners and very motivated learners. So when I got a boy after that who was not as motivated, because little boys and little girls are different, at least for me, a lot of my little boys would rather go play than sit down and read a book, where my little girls are huddled around me on the couch reading books. So what I had used for the girls just wasn't working for Samuel. And so I put it up. And you know what? It worked well for Abigail then. So Samuel and Josiah were both a little bit different with their learning styles. But then Abigail, I was able to use it again. And actually Uriah, my next little boy, it worked fine for him too. So be willing to shelve the book if the child isn't understanding, because each kid is going to be a little different in how they learn. Some kids learn from hearing, an auditory learner. Some kids learn more from watching. Some kids learn more from actually doing the work. And so finding out how they learn and how you can help them to do that. So again, be willing to change the curriculum. The next thing, maybe they're not comprehending what you're trying to teach them. I'm gonna fix my head cover because I can feel it sliding. I got some new head covers from someone and they don't stay on quite as well as my other ones. So maybe they're just not comprehending what you did. The great thing about homeschooling is that you can go back. You can go back a year if you want. Maybe you got to 5th grade math and the child is just not getting it. Go back and do a short review of 4th grade. Maybe there was something they missed. Maybe they just need some confidence that, oh, I really do know math. It's okay. I don't have to fight it. And now we're going to move forward. But being willing to say, it's okay that my child isn't a straight line going forward. Sometimes in learning, we do this, and that's okay. Sometimes as an adult, I'm really excited about learning about sourdough. And now I'm in a stage where we're just, sourdough's surviving. I'm feeding it every day. We're eating, but we're not doing new recipes and stuff. And another time I'm going to jump again, and that's okay. We need to let our kids do that too. So if they're not comprehending, go back, let them figure it out, and then move forward from there. A lot of times you can find things online that are, whether it's worksheets or like online games that can help solidify something in their head that they maybe aren't getting. Maybe there's a math concept that they really need practice with their multiplication tables or something. You can go back and let them work on those till they get them a little better before you move on. And then maybe they're not interested. That can be a very stressful time for schooling. There can be different reasons for this. So one is to help them find their interest. Every kid is motivated by something. Maybe it's that they're really excited to learn about bugs and you're trying to teach them about whales and they just don't care. Because when you as an adult don't really want to learn the new material, you're going to just absorb enough so you can take the test. Like let's say you work somewhere and you have to take the, credits. My mom's a nurse, so like take the credits to keep up her licensing. If you're really not interested in some new technology, you're going to learn enough so that you can pass that test and it's going to go right out of your brain. But if you're like, wow, this is so neat, I've never understood this before, you're going to learn it and be able to teach others about it. So doing, finding what their interest is. We need to teach the different subjects that your state talks about. I don't know what those subjects are for you, but maybe for reading, they're just not very interested in the typical Charlotte's Web. I'm a person who's not very interested in like animals talking, fiction, books like that. I want something that could actually have happened. So if you tried to give me Charlotte's Web, I might not be very interested in it, but you give me a book like Johnny Tremaine, which I know is a historical fiction. It didn't actually happen, but the fact like all those things could have happened, that book is really interesting to me. And so finding the thing that's going to help your child spark an interest, finding a time in history that they're very interested, finding a subject in science that they're very interested. Like I said, maybe they're interested in bugs and you're trying to teach about whales. It's just not going to work. Maybe finding a way that they like to present their information that's different than, so like when I was a kid, we used to have to do book reports. So some of those book reports were sitting down and writing a 2-page paper of what you liked about the book. It was really boring. But we also had teachers who would let us do book reports where we would actually like present to the class in like a presentation way. We're talking to you about what the book's about and we're bringing in like the one I really remember, I was in 6th grade. I read a book. I think it was about Esther. I don't even really remember exactly what the book was about. I don't remember who wrote it or anything, but it was a book about a biblical character. And in the book, they celebrated Passover. So I brought in matzo and juice and all of this stuff to show like how that Passover, like I didn't do an exact Passover dinner, but like showed how that Passover dinner would have gone. Or there was another time that I read a book in high school that was about, oh, I gotta go get a baby. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got the baby. This is the 2-year-old. Not really the baby. The baby's inside. But anyway, we did this book report where we read a book about what's it called? A veterinarian, and how he had to work outside in the cold and everything. And so my friend and I, it was one of those, we had to do a book report with someone else. We had everybody try to put their hands in cold water and then try to untie a knot or try to do different things that were like fine motor skills that a veterinarian would have to do in the cold weather. And I just remember that hands-on learning was so interesting to me, and I was much more willing to read the book when I got to do something fun like that. So maybe your child would be better to present it as a painting. Maybe they're like very artistic. Maybe they would rather call grandma and tell them what the book's about. Maybe they would rather write the report. There are people that would like to do that. So just finding those things that would interest your child to make them want to do more like that. The last tip for this one, because then I gotta go play with this guy. If they're not interested, it can be a little hard in those younger years to do this, but in the younger years, try to find out what would interest them and go with that. Go to the library, get a bunch of books of what they're interested in, that type of thing. But then as they get older, explaining to them why learning that subject is going to help them in their future. Maybe it's for actual real life work. So maybe you have a son who's not very interested in math, but they're very interested in carpentry. And so being able to explain to them why needing to know math is important for carpentry, because you have to learn how to measure so you can cut right, and you have to learn how to do the measurements so you can get the right pitch on the roof and all these different things. I don't know anything about carpentry, so I'm just making this up. Or maybe they want to do baking, and so you need to help them understand why it's important to know chemical interactions for the food that they're going to be doing, because if the recipe calls for baking powder and you don't have it, so you just throw in baking soda, it's not going to rise the right way. And why is that, and why does that work? So explaining to them why it's important, but also sometimes just explaining that God has made a very intricate world around us that we should want to know more about, and understand that we might not always understand all about God, but there's beauty in all of the things that he made. So whether it's mathematics and seeing the beauty in mathematics, whether it's science and seeing the things around us that God created in such an intricate way, maybe it's literature or music and showing how God has given us like imagination and creativity. But teaching them through those ways why it's important that we understand a lot about the world around us. We're never going to understand everything, but understand aspects of the world around us so that we can understand how God is going to use us in the future to glorify him. Again, this might not work when you're talking to like a second grader, but I'm saying when you have like 6th grade and up, explaining to them that each of us who is a Christian is using our lives to glorify God. And God's going to have a different purpose for each of us. And we might not understand that purpose yet, but using our education and the knowledge that we can attain to be able to use it in our future for his glory. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. We'll see you guys next time on Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God.